What's up, everybody, and welcome to the YouTube channel. I'm John Wiggins, a young sports broadcaster from Texarkana, Texas. And on today's video, I got a chance to talk to former Pleasant Grove High School head football coach Josh Gibson. Coach Gibson led the Hawks to 2 state championships and perennial success throughout 12 seasons at the helm. In this conversation, we covered leadership, communication, and building a culture. This was very structured and very to the point because it was used for one of my school projects, but it was a nice interview and it was nice catching up with the old ball coach. Now let's get into it. Talk to Coach Gibson, Texas high school football head coach legend. Coach, I chose to reach out to you because, well, I just told you off the air is your great communication skills, and the topic is professional communication. And the occupation that I selected to do it in was coaching. And you already mentioned to me a little bit about how it wasn't always there for you, your communication skills. Mm-hmm. Where did it come from, though?
Yeah, I think watching a model do it. So, like, my dad was a head coach, and so I grew up listening to coaches, give newspaper interviews, after game interviews, and I always knew the right thing to say. And when I say the right thing, how to answer questions comfortably and honestly with integrity, and then also do it in a way to honor players and coaches and shed good light on your community no matter what's happening in the game. The problem with my delivery was that I would be extremely nervous, early on. So I had the right message, but I was just so nervous, whether it's speaking at a banquet or going through one of those interviews, getting interviewed by a student on TV in Frisco, our PG TV there, those type of packages, and I would just be so nervous. And the first coach that I worked for, he said, "Man, I used to be that way too," and he was a really good interviewer, and I was like, "There's no way." And so I think practice, and then after a while, just when you talk about things that you believe in, it rolls off the tongue a little smoother. And so, I just always wanted to be honest and lift up kids and speak life into our community. And so I think I loved PG so much, it just kind of came through, and loved the kids and loved talking about them.
When did it change, though? Like you said, you obviously get better at it as you do more interviews and whatnot, but was that still nervousness still going on when you were at PG, when you entered PG, or is that something you just were able to throw behind, once you became the head man?
Yeah, I would say, probably early on in my 20s, I was a level 9 when it came to nervousness, or 10. And by the time I got to PG, it was probably down to a 4, 5. And then it got to where, it was a 2 and maybe a 1 at times. Like, it was just, hey, let's rock and roll. Love to do this. One thing I do think was important is I tried to always give time to anybody and everybody in the media, and we were fortunate here in East Texas to have a lot of coverage, not just from, newspaper, radio, Texarkana Game Day. There were so many avenues. Then you have your school people. So sometimes after a game, where a college, they'll bring you up and they may do one in the middle and there's 8 or 9 reporters, or after a game, you go in and you sit down and you answer questions at once, and they're all hearing the same questions. I would do 8 individual ones and not get to see my family after the game, and not get to see the kids or the community as much after the game. But I also felt that was my role. It was important to tell our story, and it's a responsibility,
Yeah, I find that coaches that do that are more likable than the ones that just keep it short. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The ones that don't make time, they don't come across as likable as much.
Sure. Yeah.
And but I want to get to something else that is an element of leadership communication, and we kind of talked about it in my chapter actually, was culture building. Mm-hmm. And I think this fits you to a T, is because and I can relate to kind of the early stages of you implementing the culture, because I was there, my freshman year, it was your second year. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of saw it from the beginning, and I tell people all the time, some of the why Pleasant Grove was successful at doing things. And there were things that were okay, well, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. But eventually you reap what you sow, right? Mm-hmm. So day one, you get the job, your first head coaching job. You don't have to answer to any other head coach above you. What was your first steps in implementing a culture?
Yeah, I had already developed 4 core values, and I wrote them up, and it is all on one page, and there's about a paragraph for each one of them. And I let my mom read it one time, and she's like, "Who wrote this?" And I was like, "I did." I was like, "That's what I believe in."
Mm-hmm.
And so that guided us in everything that we did. And throughout the journey, we got better at all of those things. The first one was relationships. It was going to be about people, getting people to believe in our program and believe in themselves. So belief was one of them. But I'm talking people. I'm talking parents, kids, community, younger kids coming up through. There's a lot of people that root on programs and education, and then the coaches being totally aligned and stuff. Our job in education was to grow people, so there was going to be growth in a lot of areas, growing kids, but growing facilities, growing school spirit, community spirit, and there's a lot of ways you do that. We talked about the belief, but the fourth one was discipline. So we were going to try to do it through a disciplined environment, like do it better, do the little things better than everyone else. And when you start looking at those things, like relationships got better 3 and 4 years after you were gone because of my maturation, and then our growth got better every year because we were able to stack on things that the kids before them who really turned the program around and set a foundation. Now we didn't have to worry about getting buy-in or belief that we could beat certain teams. That was an expectation. So how do we become a top 5%? How do we stay in the top 5%? When we get there, what are ways that we can look at ourselves and grow and get better? So we were always adding new things. 4 years ago, we added a literacy program because we had a junior that read at a first grade reading level. And that became important to our coaches. And we had never done stuff like that, but that was like something that Division I's, they had academic help, and we were like, how can we do stuff as coaches? And then 2 years ago, we added a nutrition program, and we were feeding our kids a 3-course, nutrition meal before practice when we go through culture meetings and then position meetings, which we didn't used to do that before a practice, but we really started trying to build the whole person. And so those 4 things, that was it from the get-go: relationships, growth, discipline, and belief. But like all of those things got better and better because obviously we were growing those, and then the longer you're there, you can establish it. And I thought we did a really good job of not getting complacent and trying to ask every year, what can we do better? What can we do better than we did last year?
Yeah, that's something I was thinking about when I was thinking about, okay, well, what are the things I want to ask is, when you get a new players that are younger, and you were there for what,
12 years. Yeah.
Initially, you have the culture set in place, and as you said, it started to just run itself at a certain point where everyone just believed already. Does that change? Like, did you ever have a group where you had to think, okay, well, this group isn't quite the smooth transition from the previous group as we've been doing?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Was there ever a sense of like?
So one thing that we ended up getting to do was all of our high school coaches, after you guys left, were able to go down to the middle school, like a lot of them, where we maybe had 1 or 2. We'd get about 5 to 6 coaches down there teaching those core values to our kids at an early age. So they've got it in 7th grade, 8th grade. By the time they were at high school, I mean, they could say every core value. They wanted to be heart and soul men, which we would identify as like the type of captains in our program, and what they needed to do in the school, outside of school, and all that stuff. But in all honesty, we had a year where it was after we won our first state championship, we had like 8 or 9 kids move in from other schools. And what are they all wanting when they want to come in from other schools? They want to be a part of something special. But several of them were like all in and were ready to do anything to be a part of PG and O. And some of them came over, and you found out that this kid was a little bit more just about themselves, and then they wanted the culture to change for them. Like a couple, and this is just 100% honesty, like a couple of their parents would say, well, I don't understand why y'all do things this way. And it's like, well, you came over here, and we have a way that we're going to do things. But that was probably the biggest year of a little difficulty, was 9 or 10 move-ins from different schools that wanted something better, but then also a few of them wanted stuff their way, and it's like, no, we're not going to bend. And in actuality, a couple of those kids ended up moving away, and we started smooth selling again. And so I attribute the smooth selling part. I don't think it ever runs itself. I think you have to keep processing. I think kids have to keep hearing it, and the ones that have been hearing it from 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, there's a maturation in them, but they believe it because they've been here the whole time hearing it and being part of the process too.
That's a perfect segue for my next thing.
Good transition.
Because in one of my chapters, we talked about how businesses, or in this case, team organizations, and then I also did an article that I had to annotate about Bill Belichick. Their sayings and their pillars of the Patriots was do your job, and you have these like things that stay the same regardless of changing faces. Heart and soul, full tilt are the ones that I mostly identify with you.
Yeah.
Why are those important? Like, why is it so important to, and I know because I was there, but why do you think it's so important to just to have those slogans?
Yeah, I think to be able to tie your vision and your core values all together, and you kind of branding your program. So these are things that ended up on little kids' T-shirts, on birthday cakes. You'd see it, and so full tilt. That was so easy because at first it started off early in my career. I used to tell kids like, you have to go full tilt when you play. You got to give everything you got. But then it really became like, are we doing that in the classroom too? Are we giving that type of energy in our relationships? So it starts tying into those 4 core values. Are we full tilt in everything we do? Well, we're never going to be perfect, but that's the standard. Let's go as hard as we can and be where our feet are. So if we're in the classroom, like, don't waste time. Be the best student you can be, or you are wasting it. So that was our speed and the way we were going to attack life. Heart and soul was the relational part. Once again, another core value along with belief. You give your heart and soul to others. They're going to give it back to you. So we were going to be extremely relational, and I think our kids did believe that we did things differently and we were tighter knit, and so that belief factor went through the roof. And I remember Coach Moore said one time, he's like, these suckers think that they can go beat Notre Dame, and we might not do it, but everybody that walked out of that tunnel thought we were going to win every single night. And I asked Jackson last week, I said, was there ever a game, you didn't think we were going to win? And he said, maybe one, But I think most of the time our guys really believed heart and soul, and it was, once again, it's just a process of investing in each other. But I think those things are important for branding and buy-in,
Yeah. That's another great segue. So you talked about how we all believe we can beat anyone, which was true. Like when you were there, like everyone feels like, and I'm going to give an example. Gilmer. I always tell this to people. It's like in Coach Gibson's first few years, it was about closing the gap with Gilmer because they were a dynasty, right? And you used to always say that we're going to close the gap on someone who's already there where we want to be.
Yeah. And
each year you saw that, you reaped what you sow at my freshman year. So I think your first year, a blowout loss to them in the playoffs.
Yep.
And following season, closed the gap a little more. It's like 50 to 46 something.
It was 40 to 36.
Yeah,
we lost by 4, and they were ranked 1 in state, so we closed the gap in year 2.
And then after that, it was like steamrolling them because then they weren't really. I mean, I remember my senior year. I mean, we did close the gap eventually, and so that kind of connects with the slogan thing, is because you're always being reminded of heart and soul. You're always being reminded of these values. But we were also always being reminded of who we're trying to chase, which we were. And we were able to close it. Kind of the same way that we were able to galvanize like the entire culture.
Yeah, for sure.
You remember that?
Yeah, everything you're saying. I'm surprised you remember that.
I always remember that. I was like, Gilmer was hot stuff, and we did close the gap. So,
yeah. The year we beat him, your brother was in that locker room. And I had told the kids, I said, we've been closing the gap. We've been knocking on the door, and I was knocking on it. And then I said, and then last year we lost by 4, and they could really feel us coming. And I started banging on that door, and I said, this year we can kick it off, hinges, and we blessed it out of there. And every dude said they knew we were going to win. And, that was a close game that we won. Carson caught the touchdown in the last series, and we did it at their place. But that's probably one of the best wins in those 12 years, even compared to a state title win, because that was the win that led to that 16-0 season. Our kids needed a marquee win. Right. And once we got that, they were like, yeah, nobody's in our way now.
I want to get back to the relationship part of the leadership. So I think it improved after I left was the little things that you guys do with the culture parties, the meals, like all of that stuff kind of grew more so after I left, right? When I was in school, I remember, you're going to get a kick out of me remembering this, we did the note cards to each other during the playoffs. What kind of importance is that on the players doing that to each other, and also coach to player? And how do you see like the importance of that part of the relationship? Because then it's like not just you and the player, it's the players within themselves. Kind of governing themselves in a way. Yeah.
So 2 things. One, you alluded to us doing some things different after you left. We, like I said, we continued to grow and evolve with what can we do better than we did in the past. So we wrote note cards in the playoffs. Well, we started going to a place where we wrote every single kid every Friday from game 1 on. So we would take our roster on Sunday as coaches and split it up, and every coach would sign up for 3 kids. And so over the course of the season, you're going to write all 40 kids, or 50 kids, 48 kids, 3 kids times 16 weeks. They're all getting a note. But that, I just think that was another way to go. We're doing something that nobody else is doing, but it's something that kids need to do. They need to have belief poured into them, about a game. They need to have the affirmation. It's the only time I'm going to write you. So, that dude would tell you when they were getting those cards that we'd read them right before we walk out, and those kids would be in there crying. And then you look them in the eye, and they're like, they're going to go kill themselves for each other and for you. Right. Yeah. And so there was a power to that. And then, just we encourage them, keep them for the rest of your life. That way you get kind of down, go in there and read those cards, and you see somebody, 2 or 10 years later, and you hadn't got a chance to spend that much time with them, you're going to pick up right where you left off. And I don't know if I hit the second part of your question, but I just think there was so much power in doing that stuff, because it just shows those core values overlap in relationships, growing relationships, those 2 things, getting your belief. There was a discipline. We have to take time to do something nobody else is doing. So, what a great tool, Yeah, the culture parties and things. We started using those to set the standards of how our kids were going to act at school, how they were going to treat each other, how seniors were going to get those incoming freshmen. So it was 9 through 12, and we'd break up into mini groups. They would talk about things that they went through at home, which we didn't do with you guys, things that they struggled with, so you could understand, kind of where kids were coming from and what they were struggling with. And then I think you take that information and you build that relationship, and then hopefully able to grow that kid, because a lot of kids went through a lot of stuff, and then that just belief in each other that we were really going to take care of them. And I feel a little guilty about it, because I took the job at 34, probably did a better job on all of that stuff after the 3 state titles that came at 38, 39, 40 years old. And then I did, those first few years, but that was kind of like a, hey, forgive me, no coach that I'd ever been around had done that stuff. And we would sit there and come up with ideas what can we do differently that we haven't done that would really hit home? And it would be 10 coaches sitting around a table coming up with ideas together,
I'm just going to say, from the programs that I know about, I think you're right. I've never heard of that being done elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, and, culture gets thrown around a lot. Like, that's such an overused term, but it's real. Like, it was real at Pleasant Grove. And I think even when we weren't as talented, like, that stuff, like you said it earlier, you can go to war with these kind of people because you already have that close-knitness,
So I think there is a group, either 2 classes behind y'all or something, that won 0 games in 7th grade and 1 in 8th grade. And then by the time they're seniors, we go 4 rounds deep, and they never had a year where they didn't get to play through Thanksgiving. And you just look at the growth of those type of classes. We had 2 classes that came through that were like that at 2 different times. And it was scary because it was like, man, are we going to be able to continue this? And I do give credit to our culture. I would say that was probably our greatest strength in the last, 6 to 7 years. If we were going to fall short, we probably fell short, to be honest and frank, on X's and O's. Like, I would tip my hat to Surratt and them and say, y'all probably did a better job on this than us. But I always thought that the things we were trying to do with the kids every day would help them for the rest of their lives. And it wasn't just about football. It was going to build a really good football team, but we're going to take care of the student. We started doing a lot of spiritual stuff and giving them opportunities, not forcing on, but if they wanted it, any avenue and every avenue, and then how they were going to treat their teachers, and really change the culture up at the school a lot too. It took a lot of time to do that.
One more question, because I don't think people think about this a lot in terms of coaching, is coaches like players, and you alluded to players having struggles off the field too. How does your day as a coach change whenever you're going through something personal? And yeah, I guess that's my question, but I mean, that's hard to hide for somebody like me who's like going through something. It's hard for me to like fake it. I mean, I do fake it sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
But I feel like a coach, you're so like immersed into everything. You know what I'm saying? Especially you were very like immersed into everything. How do you think that affects leadership communication?
Yeah, to be honest, I was able to compartmentalize that stuff to where that I didn't want kids, if they were having bad days, to come into athletics, what should have been the best part of their day. And I think we evolved to this, like, let's leave the baggage outside and not deal with it. Let's talk about it later after practice, and doing it in some culture time or doing a one-on-one time, because we want to help you get through the hard part of your life. If a dad's not there to help you, or if a dad's gone, or there's just, you lost somebody. I mean, we had kids whose dad got murdered while they were in our program. And like you talk about that's some heavy stuff. And so that kid needs time. But like during that moment, for me, when I was going through tough stuff, there was a time that I was going to be able to deal with it when I got home in the right way, or when I get up in the morning before I get there. That way, when the kids show up, I can give them every part of me, and help them, and be where my feet are, which is I'm there to serve them during that time, and coaches too. And I'll be honest, like, there may have been a handful of days my whole career that by the time I became a head coach, that I wasn't, who I needed to be that day, because I think coaches get good at that. You have to show up. Everybody's going through something, right? We all do. I mean, I currently am. But when we go through things, we still have to show up for others, and especially in education as coaches, those kids, they need you. And so I went through a couple of tough spells at times, and I think I did a good job hiding it from kids. And then maybe sometimes I would break down and tell them what I was going through, just so they'd know, so that they could also see some authenticity, that like, if this dude's going to be vulnerable and tell us things that he's going through, or ways that he screwed up, or ways that he didn't do right as a dad, or he didn't do right as a wife, then I would always tie it back in, like, maybe I messed this up, but like, I've been with my wife since middle school. She's the only one I've been with, like, so I might mess up, but don't get me wrong, like, we're not tapping out at things or stuff like that. And so there would be lessons that tie into that. But then kids became a lot more vulnerable, and I think that helped us with our growth,
Yeah, because when you can admit it's not all going well, because it's not all butterflies,
No.
I think that really does strengthen, sort of scar tissue kind of thing kind of does strengthen you. So.
Yeah, and I think other men do too, because like we're there, so I may be going through something and you're not at that time, and you pick me up because I picked you up before, or that goes. I mean, morally too. If there's 3 of us and 2 of us are cussing too much, and one guy's like, "Hey man, we said we weren't going to do that as much." You're right. Like men strengthen each other, and they can also bring each other down. But we were always going to try to be goal-oriented and grow, like we're going to get better and better. We're going to have some goofy days, some bad days, but let's get back on the horse pretty quick.
Right on. I think that covers everything I had. Coach,
Cool.
I really appreciate it.
Heck
This
yeah,
awesome.
dude. Let's go get an A.
For our hearts.